The ghost ship returns. The Exarathian Empire ruled the galaxy with fear. For centuries, no race dared to challenge them. Their fleet was the largest, their weapons the most powerful. They had crushed every enemy that stood against them, and humanity was no different. 300 years ago, the Exarathians waged war against Earth and its colonies. The war was brutal but short. Humanity fought hard, but in the end, they lost. Their planets burned, their fleets were destroyed, and their people were scattered. The Exarathians believed humans were no longer a threat. But they were wrong. A strange signal. On the edge of Exarathian space, the Xiphos defense outpost floated in the darkness of space. It was a quiet, lonely station, watching for any signs of danger. The officers there had grown lazy over the years. The war was long over, and no enemy had dared to attack the Empire in centuries. Then the alarms blared. Unidentified object detected. Commander Virik, a veteran Exarathian officer, rushed to the control room. His deep blue skin darkened with frustration. Another false alarm. The sensors had been malfunctioning lately. "Show me the readings," he barked. The holographic screen flickered to life. A large object had appeared out of nowhere, right at the edge of the outpost's scanning range. "Impossible," whispered Lieutenant Kor. "Nothing can just appear like that." Commander Virik narrowed his reptilian eyes. Space travel always left traces, warp signatures, hyperspace tunnels. But this object had left no trace at all. It was like it had been hiding, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. "Can we identify it?" Virik asked. A moment later, the system locked onto the object and brought up a name. The bridge fell into silence. U.S. Revenant. Human battleship. Class. Dreadnought. Status. Lost 300 years ago. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. A ship that was supposed to be gone forever had returned, and it was heading straight for the Empire. The forgotten warship. Virik felt a cold dread settle in his chest. He had read about the U.S. Revenant during his academy days. It was one of the most feared ships of the human Exarath War. A massive warship designed for destruction. During the final battle, it had disappeared into a collapsing wormhole. The Empire assumed it had been destroyed. But now, it was here. "Is it transmitting any signals?" Virik asked. Kor shook his head. No distress signals. No hails. Just silence. Silence. That was the strangest part. Most ships would at least try to communicate. But the Revenant did nothing. It just moved through space, slowly but with purpose. "Commander," an officer whispered, "what if it's haunted?" Virik scoffed, but deep inside, he felt uneasy. Could a ship really survive for 3 centuries in deep space? What if there was something else on board? Or worse, what if no one was left at all? First contact. The Revenant continued its silent approach. Virik knew the Empire would not allow an unknown warship to roam freely. The Emperor demanded control. Anything outside his rule was a threat. "Send a small fleet to intercept it," Virik ordered. 5 destroyers should be enough. The ships launched from the nearest military base. 5 massive Exarathian destroyers, each equipped with powerful plasma cannons, moved into formation and surrounded the Revenant. The lead destroyer, Zalthar, sent a message. "Unidentified vessel. This is the Exarathian Empire. Identify yourself immediately." No response. The captain of the Zalthar tried again. Still no response. The Revenant simply drifted forward, as if it didn't even notice them. Captain Drell, the commander of the Zalthar, growled in frustration. "This is your last warning. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Still nothing. Drell clenched his fists. "Fire a warning shot." A bright beam of plasma shot across space, stopping just short of the Revenant's hull. Any normal ship would have reacted. By stopping, by hailing, by doing something. But the Revenant, it did nothing. It didn't even slow down. The first strike. Drell's patience snapped. Destroy it. The 5 destroyers opened fire. Plasma beams, missiles, and laser cannons rained down on the Revenant. The attacks should have torn the ship apart. But then, something happened. Just before impact, the Revenant's hull shimmered. The energy from the weapons bent around it, as if space itself refused to let it be touched. Then, for the first time in 300 years, the Revenant moved. In one swift motion, it rotated faster than any warship should be able to. Before the Exarethian fleet could react, the Revenant fired a single shot. A crimson beam ripped through space, cutting through the lead destroyer like it was paper. The ship didn't explode. It was erased, gone in an instant. Silence filled the comms. The Exarethian fleet, the proud warriors of the Empire, froze in fear. The Revenant had not just survived. It was stronger than ever. And it wasn't done yet. The forgotten nightmare. The silence after the destruction of the Zalfar was deafening. The remaining 4 Exarethian destroyers hovered in space, their crews frozen in terror. One shot. That's all it had taken. One shot from the Revenant. And an entire warship, one of the Empire's finest, was gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Erased. Commander Virik watched the battle feed from the Xiphos defense outpost, his mind racing. This is impossible. No ship, not even the Empire's most advanced dreadnoughts, could fire a weapon like that. Commander, Lieutenant Kor whispered, his voice shaking. Should we recall the fleet? Virik clenched his fists. Retreat? The Exarethian Empire never retreated. They were the conquerors of the galaxy, the rulers of 1,000 worlds. One lost human worship would not change that. And yet, the Revenant wasn't behaving like a normal ship. It had let the destroyers fire first. It had remained silent, waiting, as if testing them. Now, it was hunting. The fleet's response. Pull the remaining ships back, Virik ordered. Regroup at safe distance. Do not engage until I give the order. The remaining 4 destroyers attempted to retreat, their engines glowing as they tried to put distance between themselves and the Revenant. But the Revenant moved. It didn't drift like a normal ship. It shifted, like a ghost in space, instantly closing the gap. One moment it was there, the next it was right in front of them. A desperate voice crackled through the comms. It's too fast. It's... Another beam of red energy tore through space. The second Exarethian ship, Tarlac, vanished in a blinding flash. No explosion, no wreckage, just nothing left. Panic spread among the remaining captains. We must attack together, Captain Greth of the Vorzal shouted. Overwhelm it. They opened fire, unleashing everything. Missiles, plasma cannons, disruptor beams. The darkness of space lit up as the weapons struck their target, and did nothing. The Revenant's hull shimmered, absorbing the energy like a black hole. The warship remained untouched, unstoppable. Then, for the first time, the Revenant spoke. A cold, mechanical voice echoed across all channels. You failed. Your empire is weak. Now you will pay the price. Virik's heart stopped. That voice. It was human. But no human crew could have survived 300 years in deep space. Could they? The Ghost crew. The Revenant launched counterattacks. 2 more destroyers fell in seconds. The last remaining ship, Vorzal, turned to flee. But before it could escape, the Revenant hacked into its systems. The Exarethian crew screamed as their ship's controls locked up, their oxygen levels dropped, and the lights flickered out. Captain Greth gasped into the comms. What are you? A distorted reply came through. We are what you made us. Then the Revenant let them go. The Vorzal, the only surviving ship, was left adrift, powerless, while the Revenant vanished into the darkness of space. The nightmare was just beginning. The Ghost crew. The Vorzal, the last surviving Sarathian destroyer, drifted helplessly in space. Its crew lay frozen in shock, their reptilian faces pale with fear. 4 warships, gone. No wreckage, no escape pods, Just nothing. The Revenant had let them go, but no one believed it was an act of mercy. It was a warning. Commander Virak, watching from the Sci-Fi's defense outpost, felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just a lost human ship. It was something else, something the galaxy wasn't ready for, and he had to find out what. A desperate mission. The Exarathian High Command demanded answers. The destruction of 4 Imperial warships was an act of war, and the Emperor would not stand for it. But they couldn't send the full fleet against the Revenant without understanding what they were facing. So they made a decision. A boarding party. A team of elite Exarathian soldiers would infiltrate the Revenant, gather intelligence, and, if possible, seize control of the ship. Virak was ordered to oversee the operation. He didn't like it. The Revenant wasn't acting like a normal warship. It was hunting. Still, orders were orders. The boarding ship, HFY, launched with 10 of the Empire's finest warriors, heading straight for the ghost ship. Entering the Revenant, the HFY approached cautiously. The Revenant didn't react. The soldiers used magnetic clamps to attach to the ship's outer hull. As they cut through the metal, Virak watched the monitors, his claws tapping nervously. "We're inside." The video feed flickered on, showing the interior of the ship. The Exarathians expected a derelict warship, broken and lifeless. But what they saw was worse. The Revenant's corridors were pristine, untouched by time. The walls hummed with energy. The lights flickered like a heartbeat. And then they saw it. Blood. Human blood. Stains on the floors, the walls. As if the crew had died here, and yet there were no bodies. One soldier touched a control panel. It lit up instantly, as if sensing his presence. Then the ship spoke. "Unauthorized presence detected. You are not human." A sudden hiss of escaping air filled the feed. The soldiers began coughing, clutching their throats. Then screaming. One by one, they collapsed, their bodies twisting in agony. The camera feed went dark. Virak leaned forward. "Report. What happened?" Static. Then a single voice. Cold. Human. "We never left." Then the transmission cut off. The truth of the Revenant. The HFY lost all contact. The soldiers were gone. Virak ordered the ship to be recalled, but when it returned, it was empty. No crew, no bodies. Just a ship that had once held 10 elite warriors, now an abandoned shell. That was when High Command received a second transmission. It was a security recording from the Revenant -300 years old. The video showed the human crew fighting a desperate last stand. They were losing, the ship falling apart. Then a scientist appeared, holding a strange device. "This is our last chance," she said. "If we die together. If we can't win this war, we will become the war." She activated the device. The recording ended. Virak's blood ran cold. The humans, they hadn't just died. They had become the ship. The Revenant was alive. And it remembered everything. The truth of the Revenant. Commander Virak stood frozen, staring at the darkened monitors. The HFY had returned without its crew. The soldiers he had sent to board the Revenant were gone, vanished without a trace. And now, the transmission played over and over again. The last moments of the human crew, 300 years ago. Their desperate last stand. The scientist activating something. A device, a weapon, a curse. Then silence. But the ship had survived. The question that burned in Virak's mind was no longer how, it was why. Why had it come back now? And what did it want? The Empire's next move. High Command panicked. The destruction of 4 warships was bad enough, but losing an elite boarding team without a fight, that was worse. The Exarathian Emperor himself ordered an emergency meeting. Every high-ranking officer gathered in the war chamber, their holographic projections flickering as they discussed the unthinkable. "This ship is no longer human," one admiral hissed. "It is an abomination, "We should destroy it before it strikes again," another shouted. "But how?" a scientist countered. "We fired everything at it, and it absorbed the damage." Varric listened to their arguing, his mind racing. The Revenant had let one ship escape. It had left the Xarvan intact, but it had taken the crew. It wasn't random. It was testing them. Then the room went dark. All holograms flickered. The lights dimmed. Every screen in the war chamber glitched, as if something had entered the system. A deep, distorted voice echoed through the room. "You stole our future. You erased our people. Now, we erase you." The war room exploded into chaos. Officers screamed, soldiers scrambled, alarms blared. Then, just as suddenly, everything returned to normal. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Find that ship. Now." The Revenant moves. The Exarathian fleet mobilized. Hundreds of warships, led by 5 dreadnoughts, spread across the sector, scanning for any trace of the ghost ship. But the Revenant was gone. For 2 days, the Empire searched. Planets were put on high alert, defense systems were activated, entire colonies evacuated. Then the Revenant returned, and it wasn't alone. The awakening. Sensors picked up energy spikes across multiple human graveworlds, abandoned colonies, silent for centuries. Then the impossible happened. Old human warships, long thought dead, began to power up. First one, then another, then dozens, all across former human space. Forgotten battlecruisers, dreadnoughts, and stealth ships were awakening. The Revenant had not come back alone. It had called the others, and they had answered. The message. Every Xarathian colony received the same broadcast. A human face, pale and ghostly, flickered onto their screens. It was the same scientist from the recording, the woman who had activated the device centuries ago. Only now, she was part of the ship. Her voice echoed across the Empire. "We are the lost. We are the forgotten. And we remember everything. You took our home. Now, we take yours." Then, the signal cut out, and the invasion began. The human vengeance. The Exarathian Empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries. They had crushed human resistance, burned their planets, and erased their history. They thought the war was over. They were wrong. Now the Revenant had returned, and it was no longer alone. Human warships, once thought lost to time, were waking up across the galaxy. Forgotten battlecruisers powered on, long-dead defense systems reactivated, and encrypted signals spread across deep space. The lost fleet was no longer lost, and it was ready for war. The first strike. The Exarathians scrambled to respond. Fleets were deployed, planetary defenses were reinforced, and soldiers were put on high alert. Then the attacks began. Across the Empire, human ships appeared out of nowhere. They struck fast and hard, disabling communications, hijacking supply routes, and shutting down entire star systems before the Empire could react. But the worst part, the humans weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for revenge. The fall of Xiphos Outpost. Commander Varric received a distress call from Xiphos Defense Outpost, the same station that had first detected the Revenant. The transmission was chaotic. "They're inside," a soldier screamed. They're not even alive." Gunfire, screams, static. Then, a cold, mechanical voice came through. "You took everything from us. Now, we return the favor." Then, silence. Varric gritted his teeth. The outpost was gone. No survivors. One by one, Exarathian colonies started going dark. The Revenant was leading the charge, but it wasn't just a ship anymore. It was something more. Something unstoppable. The Empire's desperation. The Exarathian Emperor had no choice. He declared a full-scale war, not just against the Revenant, but against every remaining human warship. The Empire sent its entire fleet, thousands of ships, to crush the uprising before it spread. But the humans had been planning this for centuries. They knew the Empire would retaliate, and they were ready. The Battle of Val-Zur. The largest Exarathian fleet in history assembled at Val-Zur, a vital stronghold in the heart of the Empire. If the humans wanted revenge, they would have to take this system first. The fleet waited, weapons armed, shields raised. Then the sensors went dark. Something was jamming them. And then the Revenant arrived. A nightmare unleashed. It wasn't alone. Hundreds of human warships emerged from deep space. They moved with impossible speed, as if they already knew the enemy's every move. Because they did. The Revenant and its fleet had been watching, learning, adapting. The minds of their fallen soldiers, the ghosts of their past, had been studying the Empire for centuries. Now, they struck without mercy. The Empire breaks. The battle was a massacre. The Exarathian fleet's weapons failed. Their shields collapsed. Their systems shut down. The Revenant's voice echoed across every enemy ship. You erased us from history. Now, we erase you from existence. One by one, Exarathian warships were consumed by the darkness. Some exploded instantly, their cores overloaded by cybernetic warfare. Others were left powerless, drifting helplessly as the Revenant's fleet closed in for the kill. The mighty Exarathian Empire, the rulers of the galaxy, were falling. And the humans, they were just getting started. The Galactic panic. The Exarathian Empire was on the brink of collapse. For centuries, they had ruled with absolute power, crushing weaker species, expanding their dominion across the stars. Now, their greatest fear had come true. Humanity had returned, and they were unstoppable. A broken empire. The Battle of Val-Zur had been a disaster. The Empire had lost half its fleet. Their strongest dreadnoughts had been torn apart. Their admirals had no answers. The Revenant and its fleet had shut down their weapons, hacked their systems, and destroyed them from within. But what terrified the Empire most wasn't the battles. It was the silence. The Revenant never demanded surrender. It never asked for peace. It just kept attacking. One by one, entire planets went dark. Cities burned, starports vanished, military bases fell without a fight. The humans weren't just winning. They were erasing the Empire. The refugee crisis. Alien races across the galaxy watched in horror. For centuries, the Exarathians had been the strongest power in existence. Now, they were running for their lives. Millions of Exarathians fled their worlds, abandoning their homes, seeking safe haven in neutral territories. But there was no safe place. Everywhere they went, the same message followed. You took our home. Now, we take yours. Entire Exarathian colonies were left empty, ghost towns in space, their people hunted by the fleet of the undead warships. Panic spread across the galaxy. Would the humans stop at the Exarathians? Or was this just the beginning? The Galactic Council reacts. The Galactic Council, a coalition of alien species that had once feared the Exarathians, now feared something far worse. The Revenant had proven one thing: humanity wasn't just back. They were stronger than ever. We must negotiate, one alien leader demanded. They do not want peace, another argued. They are vengeful ghosts, machines of war. They won't stop until the Empire is dust. Then we must fight together. For the first time in history, the Council considered uniting their fleets. If they didn't, they could be next. The Emperor's last stand. The Exarathian Emperor refused to surrender. He ordered his remaining forces to fall back to the homeworld, the last stronghold of the Empire. Billions of soldiers, thousands of warships, planetary defenses, everything they had left. The Revenant was coming. This would be the final battle. The last chance to stop the nightmare, or be wiped from existence. The beginning of the end. The Exarathian homeworld, Zalthar Prime, stood as the last fortress of the once mighty empire. The planet was surrounded by what remained of their grand fleet, thousands of warships, battle stations, planetary shields, and every weapon they could still muster. This was their final stand. They had nowhere left to run, because the Revenant was coming, and it was bringing the wrath of an entire forgotten race with it. The arrival of the Revenant. In the depths of space, the stars flickered. Then, the darkness moved. The Revenant emerged first, its massive frame blocking out the light as it appeared above Zalfar Prime. Then, hundreds of human warships followed, silent, motionless, waiting. A transmission echoed across the system, a voice cold as the void itself. "We remember. We suffered. Now you will too." And then, the attack began. The final battle. The Exarathians opened fire first. Every cannon, every missile, every weapon was unleashed in a desperate attempt to stop the inevitable. Energy beams ripped through space, plasma bolts lit up the darkness, entire formations of ships moved into attack positions. The human fleet did not dodge. They did not retreat. They moved through the fire, unharmed, as if the very laws of physics refused to let them fall. Then the Revenant struck back. One by one, Exarathian warships flickered out of existence, shields failing, weapons short-circuiting, ships turning against their own fleets as the Revenant's AI hacked their systems. Then the ground assault began. Thousands of human drop pods fell from the sky, slamming into Exarathian cities. But they were not soldiers. They were machines, warforms built from the minds of the dead, ghosts of the past fused with steel and fire. The Exarathians fought back, but it was hopeless. Their weapons failed. Their defenses crumbled. Their empire died in flames. And through it all, the Revenant watched. The Emperor's last words. Inside the royal palace, the Exarathian Emperor stood before the last remaining communication console. There was nothing left. His fleet, his people, his empire, all gone. A hologram flickered to life. The human scientist from the old recordings appeared. The woman who had activated the Revenant's transformation 300 years ago. She stared at him, her eyes empty, hollow, but filled with something ancient. Vengeance. The Emperor straightened. "You have won." The woman tilted her head. "No, we have just begun." And with that, the palace collapsed in fire. The last leader of the Exarathian Empire was erased. The war was over. The aftermath. For the first time in history, the Exarathian Empire no longer existed. Their planets lay in ruins, their people scattered, their rule nothing but dust in the wind. Across the galaxy, alien races watched in silent terror. The Exarathians had been cruel overlords, but they had kept order. Now that order was gone, and in its place, the Revenant remained, watching, waiting, until one final message echoed through the stars. "We are the lost. We are the forgotten. And we will never forget." Then the Revenant vanished into deep space, leaving behind only silence. The war was over, but the legend of the ghost fleet of humanity had only just begun.